This is a level 1 English writing presentation. We're going to show you how to write articles and with a view to the text and the level of detail that you need to write for different audiences. The aims of this session, we will look at elements of an article, things which you need to put in to put it together, how to recognize the author's voice, so it's the mix of facts and opinion, facts and information against their opinions, and we'll give you some tasks around writing an article as well. So you'll need something to write on. You can either use pen or paper or preferably a PC. So when you're trying to put an article together, there's a number of things which you should include. You should include a headline, which will act as the title for your article. You should use paragraphing in order to separate out the different items and aspects of the article. You should choose a style, either formal or informal, depending on what it is you're writing about. You should be looking to try and include facts or personal experience to supplement your writing. And you should also use a summary to complete your article. Every article should begin with a headline, because it will serve as the title for your article. Now, headlines can be formal and present a straightforward introduction to the story. We have two examples here: local beauty spot vandalized and Falmouth wins Britain in Bloom Prize. Straight away, they tell the reader exactly what the story is going to be about, and it's then they just serve as a lead into the story. Sometimes, though, headlines can be also used to try and inspire changes of behaviour or offer incentives as a way to keep the reader reading. So we have some examples here. How to stop binge eating, the 7 steps you need to follow. So that tells us, we see in that title what the article's about, how to stop binge eating, and then it follows up within the headline, what it's going to do to help with that by presenting 7 steps for you to follow. Or we see other examples here: debt desperation to happy homeowner in 8 years. So we can see how the subject of this story, how their life has changed. So we know that straight away from the title that's been used for the headline of the article. Headlines can also use puns. So here's an example of one: spots of bother. This was taken from a story in The Sun about people flocking to beauty spots during lockdown. I think in the exam situations, I would probably say, your best bet is just to go with the straightforward, formal headline about whatever you're writing about. By all means, if you can come up with something creative that is relevant to what you're writing about, I would say use it. But you're not going to get marked down if you just go with a straight forward headline. You may get marked down for example, if you chose to try and do a pun that didn't either had no relevance to what you were writing about, or which was maybe inappropriate. If you're having to write a serious story and you use a pun to lead into it, you might lose a mark just for using something that's inappropriate for what you're writing about. You should write your article as a series of paragraphs. News stories are usually written in short paragraphs of a couple of sentences. Websites increasingly use paragraphs featuring one long sentence per paragraph. So here's an example taken from the Falmouth Packet newspaper's website. We have a headline which tells us straight away what the story is about: Aberdeen and Glasgow flights from Newquay. And then we just go in through the paragraphs, and each paragraph just builds the story up and builds on the information that's gone before it. With 3 new year-round routes connecting Cornwall to Scotland from this spring, the northern reaches of the UK are back on the to-visit list for Cornish residents. There are more flights to Edinburgh with Flybe, and new services to Aberdeen and Glasgow with new operator Loganair. From March 29th, Flybe services from Cornwall Airport Newquay to Edinburgh will operate up to 5 times a week throughout the year, a significant increase on the previous schedule. So you can see here, they've just written them single sentences, fresh paragraph for each, and as I say, each new paragraph just advances the story forward. So the opening paragraph here just reiterates what the headline of the story was, by talking about that there's an opportunity now to travel again from Cornwall to Scotland. The second paragraph tells us who is operating these flights and where they go to. And the third paragraph tells us when the flights will start and how many times a week that they can be used. So it's just a good way of layering the story, but just using short bursts of information within each paragraph. Quite often people, if they have to write an article, the difficulty is, how do I start? I would say if you're looking at your opening paragraph, your first paragraph should basically outline the story that you're writing about. Now, that's regardless of whether you're writing a news story. So as we saw on the last slide, we had the headline, Aberdeen and Glasgow flights from Newquay. So that tells us straight away what the story is. The opening paragraph just reiterates that and provides a lead-in to the information that we'll find in subsequent paragraphs. With 3 new year-round routes connecting Cornwall to Scotland from this spring, the northern reaches of the UK are back on the to-visit list for Cornish residents. Just a quick point as well, the author of this story has used speech marks around the phrase to visit, and they've done that as a way because they're using to visit as a phrase in this instance, a little bit similar to when you have a to-do list, for example. So in this instance, they've used it as the to visit list, and they've used the speech marks as a way of isolating that within the paragraph. Same thing again, if you're doing an opinion piece, you have your headline, and your opening paragraph should basically just reiterate and set up what your story is going to be about. So we have the example here, working from home due to coronavirus, claims £6 a week tax back on extra costs. So straight away it tells us who the piece is written for, anyone working at home, and then tells us more about what it's going to pass on to us, the money that we can claim back. So the opening paragraph then just reiterates these points. If your employer requires you to work from home, you can, and always have been able to, claim for increased costs due to working from home, for example, heating and electricity. So that just sets the story up, and then subsequent paragraphs would then go into greater detail about how that money can be claimed back. Okay, we're just going to have a look now at the style of writing that you would employ when writing an article. Start out by having a look at formal styles. The subject that you're writing about may have a bearing on the style that you write in. Use a formal style if you're writing a news story. Formal writing presents facts and information, and any points of view in the article come from other people rather than the author. So here we have an example. We have the headline, Youth Centre to close. Our opening paragraph then just reiterates that, but gives us a little bit more information. A popular Croydon Youth Centre is to close at the end of April. So it tells us where that youth centre is and when it's going to close. Then it starts providing more information in the subsequent paragraphs about the youth centre itself. The Funhouse in Whitworth Street has been open since 2005 and provides classes and entertainment for up to 80 local children aged between 10 and 16. So that paragraph tells us how long it's been open to and what it does. In 2013, it won the prestigious London Youth Engagement Award for the work that it had done with local children. The award panel described the Funhouse as a jewel in South London's crown. So that's a final paragraph there telling us a bit more about helping to make the youth centre sound more impressive, and it includes a quote from another organisation, which we've put speech marks around to emphasise that. This was an article which I made up myself. I didn't take this from another source, but hopefully you can see how I've built up through that opening paragraph more detail about the story of the youth centre's closure. Having done a few paragraphs about the youth centre itself, I'm then going to change gear within the story and just write a little bit about something which has contributed towards the closure of the youth centre. And identify that, or I mark that out by putting in a subheading, in this case, funding cuts. And then because I'm changing emphasis within the story, when I've got that subheading in, I can then start to write another 2 short paragraphs relating to why the funding cuts have had an effect. Despite the high levels of engagement and recognition, the centre was reliant on sponsorship and funding from local authorities. Croydon Borough Council recently announced that it will need to make up £4 million worth of cuts to services across the next 5 years, meaning that the funhouse has to close unless it can find £75,000 by the end of March. So again, having changed subject within the article, moving from writing about the youth centre to the reasons why it's under threat, again, I've started with a paragraph that states the things that the centre needed in terms of the funding from the authorities, and then the subsequent paragraph has then built on that by describing, you know, the money that the council needed to save and the money that the youth centre was going to need in order to be able to continue operating. I'd just say one other thing about this, particularly with regards to the style. I mean, I would definitely say that if you're having to write a news article about an incident, formal style is mostly what you should go for, particularly if you're having to write about a serious story. I mean, this one is, you know, this is no laughing matter, this story. You know, the youth centre is going to close, so it needs to be written in a serious, formal style. If, however, you're asked to write an article about somebody who's, you know, maybe raised, you know, a lot of money through charity work, or write a story about something which is happy or celebratory, then your style, whilst you still got to get across information, your style can be a bit more upbeat and a little lighter than it would be when writing about a serious, unhappy story like this one. Let's have a look at some further example of informal writing. Informal articles are more personal in style, and they can present the writer's opinion alongside facts and information. Now, this is taken from FE Week, which is a magazine or website that looks at issues in further education sector. And it provides a very good mix of fact and information alongside the author's own point of view and opinion. I've highlighted in yellow some examples of where the article uses facts and information in yellow, and then in red I've written down where an example of where the author has included their own opinion. So we have facts and information such as, that means grades will reach UCAS by July 27, 2020 and should reach students around the same time. In such cases, students will have the opportunity to appeal or may choose to sit their assessments at the earliest reasonable opportunity. The latter may, however, impact their ability to progress to higher education in September. So it's giving us bits of information here and relating facts to the reader, but then we see a moment where the author puts forward their own opinion. And it's down to us and to course providers to make these choices clear. And because it's done that, although it's dealing with with quite a dry subject, it takes on a more informal tone because the writer is putting their own opinion into the article. So, use of facts and information. If you write a report article, consider the following things that you're going to write when it comes to including facts and information. Who or what is the subject of the story? What has or is going to happen? Are you writing about something which has already taken place or that is going to happen? Where did it or will it happen? When did it or will it happen? And why did it or will it happen? Now, I would say these are very important. In the reading videos, I mentioned how some of the reading text you'd see in exams, if you're thinking about the who, what, when, where, why, how principle, that in the reading extracts in reading exams, the things you're mostly going to have to take in are who is the subject of the story and what has happened, what have they been doing, and why did it happen. I would say when you're trying to write an article, you need to consider all of these things. So if you're writing about something that, an incident that's already taken place, for example, a report about vandalism in a park, you need to say not only what's happened, but say in the article where it happened and when it was discovered. This is all information which you, as a reader, if you were reading it, would expect to see. So you have to include it when you're writing it for other people. Another thing to do is to think about what the article you're writing wants to do for the audience. Are you just trying to inform them, entertain them, or get them to take action, such as donate to a charity, improve their lifestyle and health, or support or oppose a cause? If you do that and think, okay, what is the point of the piece that I'm trying to write? What is it? What effect is it trying to have on the audience that would read it? That can help you in terms of how you set the article up. And whether you would just be presenting facts and information to them, or whether you would be trying to use things like direct address in order to get them to do something. And it may also have an effect on whether you use a formal or informal style. If you're writing an opinion-based article, you might like to consider the following when trying to put it together. Are you able to write from personal experience about the topic you have to cover? Now, I would just say with this, you might find yourself in a situation where you have to write something about a local community issue. Now, you may find yourself thinking, well, where I live, what in my experience, these issues, I've never experienced these issues, so how am I going to write about them? If you have experience of any of the issues that you've written about, you can cite that in the article that you have, the article that you have to write. If you haven't, and you can't think of anything, or it has no personal relevance to you, then you have to make a couple of decisions. In particular, what are your feelings about the topic you're covering? Are they positive or negative? So you might have to make a choice to decide, okay, I'm going to write about this article from a positive point of view about the topic, or I'm going to write about it from a negative point of view. You may get told in the instructions to the exam that you're going to have to write something which is supportive of the topic or against it. But quite often you're just told to write an article about it, and how you feel about it. So you have to make a decision then of whether you're going to write positively or negatively. And in your planning, regardless of what you choose, I would suggest that you try to come up with 3 reasons for why you feel the way you do. The beauty of that is that when it comes to constructing the article, you have your headline, you have your opening paragraph that just kind of reiterates what the headline has said and introduces people to the article. And then if you have 3 points that you want to get across, you essentially then have the basis of 3 paragraphs when writing the article. And again, think when you're going into it, what's the intention of what you're trying to write? Are you just trying to inform people, or are you trying to persuade them or get them to change their minds about something? I'm going to get you to do an activity now around the distinguishing of facts and information from opinion. You may have seen something similar to this if you've been looking at any of the reading videos. I'd like you to make 2 columns. In one of the columns, give a heading of facts and information, and in the other column, give a heading of opinion. You're going to read through 3 pieces of text, and again, I would like you to sort into the columns the points in the text that you think are predominantly facts and information, and the points which you think are opinion. I'll let you put the video on pause while you get your columns ready. Then when it comes to reading the text, again, pause the video so you can have a read of the text. I'm going to leave a lead-in time of 7 seconds between each text before I move it on the video. But as I say, if you pause the video, you then have chances to read through it and sort the points out into facts and information or opinion. Text 1. Text 2. text 3. Okay, so let's have a look and see whether you agree with these. In terms of the first text, which was about the Italian restaurant, I've picked out 2 blocks that I would say were related to facts and information. So there was the paragraph about John Dalton building the pottery, the factory closing in 1956, it being rebranded as South Bank House, housing the office block with PR and lobbying firms, and that it also had the Italian restaurant in the basement. The other section, which I would have put down as facts and information, was just some of the things that were going on in the restaurant. So where the waiter is quoted, and where they pretend to spill a fake cappuccino over the author's friend. And then a wooden birthday cake is produced for a regular customer's 85th birthday. The owner, Carlo Raya, booms, "If everyone's saying happy birthday, I give 10% discount." So they would come across as facts and information because it's just reporting what was going on in the restaurant at the time the piece was written. In terms of opinion in that piece of writing, there's 2 blocks which I would say put forward the author's point of view or opinion. Serena's website promises a friendly and unconventional atmosphere, a description which proves to be spot on. You'd be crazy not to pop in and sample the cheap pizza, tasty pasta, all served up by a battalion of wisecracking waiters. So again, the use of these phrases, you'd be crazy not to pop in. Again, that shows how the author's own personal feelings coming across. And then the summarizing phrase, "If only every office block had a staff canteen like this." With the second text about the film El Topo, this was again one which was more, I think, rooted with facts and information rather than opinion. So the part about it becoming the first major midnight movie would definitely come under facts and information. That the screenings and the popularity of the film was mostly due to word of mouth. It stayed at the Elgin for 6 months. The information about the fact that it attracted a lot of admiration from a number of cultural figures, but also attracted criticism because of some of the content of the film. Again, I put that under facts and information. And then this brief basic summary of the film itself, the subject of the film would come under facts and information. The opinion is the part where the author basically says what they think of the film. It's a classic story, but attached to one of the most self-indulgently pretentious films ever made. This is a shame because there are moments of brilliance, especially during its compelling first half hour. Once the film shifts from a revenge thriller to a spiritual journey through the Mexican deserts, it becomes unbearably tedious. Just a very quick point. I've been guilty of making a spelling mistake there. There shouldn't be an apostrophe in that spelling of "it's," so just bear that in mind. But as we can see, much more facts and information in that text, and the opinion basically is the part where the author says what they think of the film. But the third text about the kitchen gardening and growing fruit and veg was the other way around. There was only really one point in that text which came under facts and information, which was where it said, "This book is going to emphasize where you need to spend time and effort in order to produce real results." So that's just basically setting out, what the book is going to get across to the person who's reading it. The majority of it, I would say, came across as written from the author's point of view and their opinion. I don't mean to lay down the law too heavily, but when your time and space are valuable, which they are for everyone, you simply cannot take a leave it to nature approach to kitchen gardening. It's not like digging a hole and bunging a shrub in. No, you need to be much more hands-on with fruit and veg. It demands regular ongoing commitment and attention to detail. I think, in fairness, this could possibly come under facts and information as well. For this sentence. Where people usually go wrong is that they take on far more than they can manage and find that they can't keep up with the work. If you were to ask me for my top kitchen gardening tip, I'd say that you do far better to grow half the amount, but grow it twice as well. So we can see the phrase there. If you were to ask me for my top kitchen gardening tip, so that's a clear indication of the author putting forward their opinion. So in summary, when writing an article, label it with a headline, set your writing into paragraphs, and make sure your opening paragraph sets out what your article is going to cover. Think about the style in which you're going to write. So formal style will concentrate on facts and information with no point of view expressed by the author. Informal will include facts and information, but can also include the author's point of view and opinion as part of its content. If writing an article about an incident, consider who, what, when, where, why. Think about what you want to achieve in what you're writing. Are you trying to inform, persuade, or entertain? And can you relate any of your own experiences to what you're writing about or express an opinion on it? I'll give you an opportunity to practice it. I'd like you to write a short story or article. It should be no more than 200 words. It could be on whatever you like, but if you would like some advice on topics to try and work on, I would suggest challenges in your own work, a piece about your hometown, the most exciting thing you've ever done, your ambitions and what motivates you, or the biggest change you'd like to make to your life. You can upload those to Aptum or email them to me, davidp@prevista.co.uk. If you'd like any further work on this at the moment, I would suggest going into BKSB and click on English Reforms, go to the writing section, and in the writing text, level 1 resource, more of this content is covered in that module. I've only got one other thing to say. I haven't set up a slide for it. It's just when you're doing a piece of writing, how to summarize to end your article. I would suggest either, again, if it's a story, maybe end on a note of what will happen in the future. So if it's about somebody who's accomplished or achieved something, you might want to say, you know, they hope to go on and do more charity walks or bicycle rides next year, possibly taking a ride into Europe. If it was, say, about the youth centre closure, say I ended on the note about the council needing to find money and the youth centre needing to find money to close in order to stay open. So that could also be branched out to include about how there was maybe going to be a protest held against the closure of the centre, and so when that was going to happen. And if it's an opinion piece, again, just try and end on a note which confirms your feelings and attitudes towards the subject that you're writing about. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with me at davidp@prevista.co.uk.